Welcome to Scary Stories.
A collection of short, real Dogman and werewolf sightings and encounters in 2023. Story number 1. Dogman in the Selin's Grove Woods. Dear Scary Stories NYC. Selin's Grove, PA is the tiny town I grew up in and around, and it's where I saw my one and only cryptid that I've ever seen in my entire life, which was a Dogman, in case you aren't patient enough to wait till I get to that part. It's important that you understand where Selin's Grove is placed on the globe for this story to make sense. It's right on the Susquehanna River, which runs north-south in that region, and it's just to the east and north of a chain of mountains that extends down into West Virginia. That mountain chain has been a place where people have experienced more strange phenomena and seen more impossible monsters than any other place I'm aware of. Maybe Skinwalker Ranch out west is another place with a reputation like this place. To get to those mountains, you need to head west from Selin's Grove, and there are two main highways that will allow you to do that. Route 35 and Route 522, see? And in between those two roads is this big, unnamed forest area. Unnamed as far as I know, anyway. I'm not sure if it's government-owned or private or what it is, but in my opinion, there are a number of kinds of cryptids living inside those woods. If they don't live there, then there must be a portal in those woods or something, like an interdimensional bus depot. I used to have a group of friends who would sneak off to those woods, and they all told me at least one story each about seeing weird things in there. Usually it was Bigfoot, and he was the one I most wanted to see. One of my friends said they saw a pterodactyl at dusk, and when it got darker out, the pterodactyl started glowing, like his wings sort of glowed in the dark. That was the weirdest story I ever heard, but the guy insisted he wasn't BSing us. He sure seemed to be serious about his giant glow-in-the-dark dino bird. It is sort of a weird thing to try and make up, I guess, so maybe you really did see it. What I saw was pretty weird too, but it was a creature that Pennsylvania has sort of become known for. I saw the Pennsylvania Dogman, and I saw it in the woods to the west of Selin's Grove. But it wasn't just like a Dr. Meldrum animal sighting. It was an entire supernatural type experience. Okay, this next part is going to make some people angry. I've been telling this story all year, and people always get angry about this next part. Me and my friend Aubrey were playing with a Ouija board, and we asked to talk to a cryptid. I understand now that this was a stupid thing to do because I've been lectured and lectured about it. But at the time, I just thought it was sort of like the internet, only psychic. I wanted a cryptid experience, so I tried to sort of go online and order one for delivery, you might say. It didn't seem like such a big deal to me. I mean, Ouija boards are made by Parker Brothers, not by a weapons manufacturer. How was I supposed to know that something might go wrong? I mean, you don't even have to plug that thing in. So I didn't really expect it to be able to do anything. But it started to spell out words phonetically, usually misspelling stuff. We were getting a message from it about trees and nature, but we weren't really understanding it. When Aubrey started to ask it yes or no questions, it started to make more sense. Questions like, "Are you a ghost?" To which it replied, "No." "Are you alive?" It said yes. "Are you human?" "No." We asked if it wasn't human, then what was it? And it started to fly around the board choosing random letters that didn't spell anything out. I wanted to see a Sasquatch, and I had heard they were psychic, so I asked if it was a Bigfoot. It said no, but only after a bit of a pause. Aubrey asked if he was a Dogman and laughed as he said it, but the planchette went directly to yes, and I mean directly. It did not pass go, and it did not collect $200. We made plans with the Dogman to meet by the hanging tree, which is what we call a bent tree in those woods. I don't know if anyone was ever really hung there, but it looks spooky, so we call it that. The two of us were excited as we showed up, but once I was there, I have to admit that I wanted to go back to Aubrey's home. It seemed like a better idea in my head than it seemed in reality to go to this place, if you know what I mean. And then we heard the woods crackling, and we heard branches parting. And then out of those woods walked this big, nasty-looking Dogman. A killer, if ever there was one. It had more muscle than 3 professional wrestlers, and its eyes looked like they were on fire. Its ears stood up like you would expect, but it walked like a man. Not a human man, though. Some kind of hellish, cursed, unholy man. It opened its mouth as if it were going to say something, but this raspy sound came out instead. And I lost it. I screamed like a little girl when I am a 20-year-old guy. And Aubrey started running away as soon as I started screaming. When I saw him leaving, I ran twice as fast away from there. I know I was the one who had arranged this meeting, but I guess I hadn't really thought it through. We could hear that big thing running after us for a while. It sounded like it was calling out to us, but I couldn't understand what it was saying. Of course I was running as hard as I could, and I was not stopping to listen. We got away and we thought that was the end of it, but Aubrey says the thing shows up outside his window at night. And it says things to him that sound like gibberish. It has this expression on its face, like it's telling him something important, but it never makes any sense. And then it runs away. Aubrey blames me for the fact that he's bothered by the creepy supernatural Dogman. But I can't be held responsible for the Dogman in the Selin's Grove woods. Story 2, Gas Station in Lock Haven. Dear Scary Stories NYC. Here's a Pennsylvania Dogman story from earlier this year. It was coming out of winter and heading into spring, and the weather was sort of a lot like it is now in autumn, really. I think it was in the 50s that night, so a little chilly, but nothing that's going to freeze your icicles on you or anything. But instead of the leaves turning orange and yellow, most of the trees were still bare, or maybe just at the first stages of starting to sprout, you know? I was driving up north toward the Bucktail State Park Natural Area and State Game Lands 89, but I was still in civilization when this happened. I was at the intersection of Susquehanna and Hill, where there's this little gas station. Everything else around there is private homes, and off in the distance you can see the Pennsylvania hills. Those are the hills of mystery, I'm telling you. So it was dark out, and I'd filled up my car and got inside the office to pay. Then I got the bathroom key and walked around the back to take a whiz. When I walked into that bathroom, it smelled even worse than you would expect a gas station bathroom to smell. I felt like retching, but I really had to pee. So I took a few steps into this dark, smelly hellhole of a public restroom, looking for the urinals. Before seeing those, though, I saw the Dogman. It looked like some kind of avenging satanic angel or something. It was standing there perfectly still, as though it had been waiting for me for 1,000,000 years. It almost looked like a statue, but statues don't smell that horrible. And then the thing tilted its hideous head up, slightly. And our eyes met. Its eyes looked like they were from hell itself, and I don't see why they might not have been. I screamed like a cat being gutted, and I felt the warm yet cold sensation running down my leg. Well, it didn't seem like I needed to use the men's room anymore, did it? No, it didn't. So I ran. I ran back to the car, and I could hear that monster coming out after me. I ran straight to my car, jumped in, and locked all the doors before I even looked back. I saw the beastman standing silhouetted against this pale red or maybe pink house, and then it walked off behind the gas station. I waited a minute. Then I drove out to Susquehanna and down just a little ways so I could look down where I saw the monster walking. It looked to me like he was drinking water from a swimming pool. So I fished around looking for where I'd left my phone on the other seat. By the time I grabbed it, the dogman had gone away though. I doubt I would have been able to get a clear photo in the dark anyway. Not from inside my car at least. And you couldn't have paid me to go back out there on that night. I still stop at that place to get gas from time to time, but I will never again bother the dogman as he's doing his duty inside the gas station in Lock Haven. And story number 3. The Hound of Hempfield. Dear Scary Stories NYC, not too far to the east and south of Pittsburgh is a creepy little forest between little towns with names like Adamsburg and Fort Allen. It's an area called Hempfield Township, a place named for hemp, which is also known as cannabis. It was once the most important crop when we were still colonies, but not because of the smoking stuff, because rope and blue jeans and canvas for sails was made from that. In fact, the word canvas derives from the word cannabis, believe it or not. So I figured that must have been a big hemp farm at one time in the past, when it was first settled and named. And now it's a forest of the most enchanted sort. And I mean that in both a good way, in that it's charming and beautiful, and in the bad way, in that it's scary and confusing when it wants to be. It was in that little woodland that I saw and got chased by something that I am pretty convinced must have been a Pennsylvania dogman. If it wasn't some kind of a werewolf, then it must have been Cocaine Bear, because it was thin, it was wiry, and it was faster on 2 legs than any bear has a legal right to be. It was a couple of days after I had been fired from my full-time job in early summer. I had spent a day or 2 looking for another job. Then this was the day I was so frustrated that I went and took a walk in the woods. I was hoping for some peace and quiet, so I could put my head back together like Humpty Dumpty. What I got was not peace and quiet. What I got was a big monster trying to kill and eat me. Sometimes people say they sense that they're being watched, or being chased, before they finally see the dogman. But I had no idea the thing was there, until it jumped out of the bushes at me. I thought it was a chimpanzee at first, but obviously it was not. I never thought it was a Sasquatch. It wasn't as large as I would have expected one of those to be. That's not to say it was small. It was over 6 feet, because that's my height, and this was a bit taller than I am. This dog-headed monster seemed to delight in terrifying me. It screeched, and it bluff-charged me over and over again. It seemed to think all of this was funny. I thought it acted more like an ape than a dog, but in either case, it was a bully, and it was rude. I think he planned on eating me, but he was going to tire me out first. I didn't like this creature in the slightest. I tried to punch him, but he was too quick for me to land a fist. I tried to hit him with a stick, but he grabbed it away from me and spanked me with it. Whatever I did, he could undo 3 times faster, and I was running out of ideas. I was already out of breath. The dogman started chasing me out of the woods, and I was having a harder and harder time keeping ahead of him. I was crying and blubbering when I suddenly wandered out of the woods and walked face first into a cop. The dogman wisely remained in the woods somewhere behind, while the offended officer wiped my bodily fluids off of himself and took me in for questioning. Basically, I was being arrested for annoying the officer, but I was fine with that, because it sure beat the alternative. I wouldn't have even minded if I got locked up overnight on that night. It didn't come to that. But I did get taken downtown and bellowed at for a while. The arresting officer felt I was acting suspicious, but I was so grateful to be inside and safe. They eventually gave up on me and let me go. And that's my personal story about how I got chased by the Hound of Hempfield. Scary truck driver stories told in the rain. Number 1. I've been driving trucks on the highways of this country for over 2 decades, and I've seen my fair share of bizarre things. But nothing, and I mean nothing, has ever come close to what I encountered on one night. It was a long haul from Los Angeles to Dallas, and I'd been on the road for close to 12 hours. As any truck driver will tell you, pit stops are a necessity, and I had to make one. I pulled over to the side of the highway, which was surrounded by a dense forest. Being a seasoned driver, I knew never to go too far into the woods, but nature was calling, so I stepped out of my rig to relieve myself. As I was going about my BI business, I heard rustling in the bushes. I was a little taken aback, but I figured it was probably just a deer or a raccoon. Until I saw it, that is. It was a massive animal, standing upright on 2 legs, with glowing eyes, and a dog-like head. It had razor-sharp teeth, and long, sharp claws. I was frozen with fear, as it stepped out of the woods, and into the light. My heart was racing, and my mind was filled with nothing but terror. I didn't know what to do. For what felt like an eternity, I stood there, petrified, staring directly into the eyes of this creature. Suddenly that animal let out a blood-curdling howl, and I was jolted back to reality. I made a dash for my rig, zipping up my pants along the way. I jumped up and in and slammed the door shut, locking it from the inside. My heart was still racing, and my palms were pretty sweaty. I tried to start my engine, but it wouldn't budge. I looked out the window and the creature was still there, staring back at me. It seemed to have a sinister smirk on its face that scared the crap out of me. That's when I knew that this thing was not of this world. It was something straight out of a nightmare. I sat there trapped inside of my rig, unable to move for what felt like hours. Eventually the creature disappeared back into the woods, leaving me to ponder what I had just witnessed. Once he was gone, the engine started up like nothing, and I drove out of there as fast as I legally could. Believe me, that night I didn't sleep one wink, and I still have nightmares to this day about that dog-headed monster. Story number 2. I've been a long-haul trucker for years now, and I've seen some strange things on the road, but nothing quite like what I saw in the woods of northern Wisconsin one night. I was driving along a dark, deserted road, surrounded by dense woods on both sides. The only sound I could hear was the rumble of my engine, and that's when I saw him. A man on the side of the road, stumbling and clutching at his chest like he was having some kind of medical emergency. My first thought was to call for an ambulance, but there was no cell phone signal out there. I pulled my truck over and got out to see if I could help. As I drew closer to him, I saw the man's eyes change. I saw his face contort, and he started to grow hair everywhere. His chest heaved with each rasping breath, and before I knew it, he had transformed into a werewolf much larger than he had been when he was a man. I froze in terror as the creature turned its glowing yellow eyes on me. In a matter of seconds, it was bounding toward me, snarling, with razor-sharp teeth bared. I didn't know what to do. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I had to get back in my truck, but the monster was almost upon me. I scrambled backward. The werewolf was so close I could smell the stench of rotting meat on its foul breath. Just as I thought it was all over, there was a loud gunshot, and the creature howled in pain. It stumbled backward, giving me just enough time to break away and run back to my truck. I jumped in the cab and slammed the door shut, my hands shaking as I struggled to start the engine. The werewolf was still there, now snarling and scratching at the metal, trying to get at me. But I managed to slam on the gas and drive away as fast as I could. I didn't look back until I was miles down the road, heart still racing with fear. To this day, I still don't know who fired that shot or how they managed to hit that monster, but I know one thing for sure. I will never forget that night in the woods of northern Wisconsin. Story number 3. I should never have agreed to this job. Driving through the woods of northern New York State at night was the last thing I wanted to do, but the paycheck was too good to pass up. As I cruised down the empty highway, surrounded by nothing but trees and darkness, I admit that I began to feel uneasy. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. At first I thought it was just a deer, but as it drew nearer, I realized it was something else entirely. I swear to you, there was an 8 or 9 foot tall Bigfoot running alongside my truck, keeping up with the speed limit as if it were nothing. Its shaggy hair and massive form were bathed in the eerie glow of the streetlights. My heart leaped into my throat as I watched the creature keep pace with my rig. I ridiculously tried to convince myself that it was a trick of light or my imagination, but I knew deep down that what I was seeing had to be real. The truck seemed to shake as the Bigfoot thudded along beside me. Its eyes glowed in the dark, unblinking, and fixed on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't even move. I was frozen in place, locked in the gaze of this otherworldly being as I was driving 60 miles an hour down the road. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the Bigfoot vanished into the night. I sat there for a few moments trying to collect myself and shake off that feeling of dread that had settled over me. I continued driving, my hands shaking on the wheel, and my eyes darting nervously around the dark woods. I knew that no one would believe me if I told them what just happened, but the memory of that encounter will haunt me for the rest of my days. Story number 4. I've been driving on these back roads for longer than I'd like to admit. I had a load to deliver to a warehouse just outside Baton Rouge, but as I approached the small town of Grosse Tete, I couldn't resist the urge to stop at the Tiger Truck Stop. It's a truck stop in Louisiana that has living tigers in it, and I've heard so much about it over the years. I figured what harm could one quick visit do? That was, until I saw the cat-headed Dogman. It happened so fast, but it felt like it was in slow motion. I was going about 60 miles an hour when it darted out in front of me. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. The creature looked like a large dog, but with a cat's head and glowing eyes. It had long, skinny legs, and it moved with an eerie grace. I swerved to avoid it, but my truck skidded toward the shoulder of the road. My heart was racing as I fought to keep control of the vehicle. Once I came to a stop, I got out of the cab to see if I hit the animal. To my surprise, there was nothing there. It vanished into the darkness as quickly as it had appeared. At that moment, I knew I had to get out of there. I jumped back in the truck and drove toward the Tiger Truck Stop. As I pulled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The place was fairly deserted, far from the bustling truck stop I'd heard so much about. It was almost as if the cat-headed Dogman had followed me there. I quickly grabbed a sandwich and a drink, trying to ignore the feeling of unease that had settled over me. Just as I was about to leave, I saw something moving, and I turned around to see the cat-headed Dogman staring at me through the window. Its eyes were glowing in the darkness, and I swore I could feel its presence before I even saw it there. I threw some money on the table and I jumped back in my truck. Then I drove away as fast as I could. I didn't stop till I was miles away. Now as I sit in my truck, I can still feel the creature's gaze on me. I don't know what that thing was, or what it wanted, but I'm thankful I didn't crash. I don't think I'll ever go back to that area again. I'll make sure to stick to the main roads from now on. Story number 5. As I drove through the dark and empty roads of Minnesota, I couldn't wait to reach Trails Travel Center in Albert Lea. It was my pit stop for the night, and I was looking forward to sleeping in the cozy cabin, grabbing a hot meal, and catching up on some much-needed rest. As I drove through the eerie darkness, my headlights were the only source of light on that road. Suddenly my heart skipped a beat as I saw a woman in a wedding gown walking toward me in the middle of my lane. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The woman vanished in front of my truck, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Shaken, I pulled over to the side of the road, feeling a chill run down my spine. Suddenly, the passenger door of my truck opened, and I gasped in terror as the same woman who had appeared in front of my truck sat down beside me in the passenger seat. I screamed in panic, and then that woman screamed too. Her face contorted, and I could see a strange glint in her eyes. I tried to rationalize it as a hallucination from driving too long, but I knew in my heart that this was real, that I was dealing with something otherworldly. As I tried to regain my composure, I felt a cold breeze sweep through the truck, sending shivers down my spine. I literally watched as she faded from existence in front of my eyes. In that eerie moment, I realized that I was on a haunted road, and that I was both alone, and I was not alone. Story number 6. I've been driving this truck for years, and I thought I'd seen it all. But last night, just outside of the Pine Cone in Johnson Creek, Wisconsin, I saw something that I can't explain. It was around midnight, and I was driving down a narrow road, surrounded by trees. I was tired and bored, wishing I could just get home to sleep, when suddenly I saw something moving in the shadows. At first I thought it was a deer or some other kind of animal, but as I got closer, I realized it was something much more terrifying. It was a creature like I've never seen before, standing on 2 legs like a man, but covered in fur, and with the head of a wolf or a dog. Its eyes glowed kinda orange in the darkness, and its teeth were sharp and menacing looking. I slammed on the brakes of my truck, and the creature stopped and watched me for a moment, before it turned and ran back into the trees. I was shaking with fear, not sure if what I saw was real, or just my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew that what I saw could not have been a figment of my imagination. When I got back to the truck stop, I told the other truckers what I saw, but they just laughed and dismissed me as crazy. I don't care what they say though. I know what I saw. I saw a Dogman, and I'll never forget that terrifying encounter. It made me question everything I thought I knew about this world, and I can't help but wonder if there are more creatures like that out there, hiding in the shadows, waiting to scare the living daylights out of anyone who dares to cross their path. Story number 7. I've been a trucker for over a decade now, and I've seen some pretty scary things on the road. But nothing comes close to what happened to me this one night. It was pretty stormy that night, and I was driving on a deserted highway in the middle of nowhere, in the Midwest, when I saw this figure standing on the side of the road. At first I thought it was just an old man looking for a ride, but as I got closer, I realized that something was not right. The figure was wearing a long black cloak that was flapping in the wind, and its face was obscured by a hood. It stood completely still, and it seemed to be staring at me. As I drove past it, I felt a shiver run through me. I tried to brush it off as me going crazy from driving too much, but that's when things got even freakier. Suddenly my radio turned on by itself, and all I could hear was static. Then the figure appeared out of nowhere in front of my truck, causing me to slam on the brakes. I watched in horror as the figure lifted its hood, revealing a skull-like face with glowing eyes. It then raised its bony fingers and pointed straight at me. I was frozen in fear, unable to move or even scream. Then as quickly as it appeared, the figure vanished into thin air, and the radio just turned off. I was left alone on this road, trying to make sense out of what I had just witnessed. To this day, I still don't really know if what I saw was actual or just a figment of my imagination. But one thing's for sure, I never want to encounter anything like that, ever again. Story number 8. It was a dark, moonless night when I was driving my big rig down a deserted highway in western Pennsylvania. I had been driving for hours, and the only thing keeping me awake was a thermos of coffee. Suddenly I saw something in the distance. It looked like a person, waving their arms wildly, trying to flag me down. I slowed down my truck and came to a stop next to the stranger. As I rolled down my window, I could see that this person was in distress. He was sweating profusely, and his eyes were wide open with fear. "I need your help," he said in a hushed tone. "My car broke down a couple miles back and I'm stranded here. Can you give me a lift to the nearest gas station?" I couldn't refuse the man's request. "Hop in," I said. "I'll drop you off at a gas station and you can call for help." As we drove down the dark, winding road, I noticed something odd about this man. First of all, he was dressed in a full suit, even though it was the middle of the night. Secondly, I realized he hadn't spoken a single word since getting into my truck. I decided to break the silence. "So, buddy, what's your name?" I asked. The man turned toward me, and I was met with a blank stare. His eyes were now completely black, and it felt like my temperature dropped 25 degrees. Suddenly his body started to contort in the most unnatural way I had ever seen. His limbs twisted and bent at impossible angles, and his neck elongated and twisted around like a snake's. I felt my heart pounding against my chest as I slammed on the brakes, trying to get out of the truck. But somehow the doors were locked, and I was trapped inside. That creature that had been in the passenger seat was now crawling toward me, its grotesque form spitting exorcist-like words of ancient languages. I figured I should pray, but I didn't know how, so I closed my eyes and begged for divine intervention. When I opened them again, I found myself alone in my truck, parked on the side of the road. The sun was just starting to rise, and the nighttime terrors were gone. Since that night, I made sure to always keep my wits about me and never open my doors again to anyone on the road, especially in the dead of night. And finally for this episode, story number 9. I've been on the road for what feels like an eternity. It's just me, my semi-truck, and the endless stretch of highway ahead. The darkness of the night is suffocating, and my headlights barely pierce through the thick forest surrounding me. The only sounds I hear are the hum of my engine and the occasional blowing of the wind. As the night wears on, I begin to feel an overwhelming sense of unease. I can't put my finger on what's causing it, but my instincts tell me that something is off. Possibly it's the isolation, or maybe it's the eerie silence. My cell phone tells me it's midnight, and an unexplainable feeling of dread creeps over me. I try to shake it off and focus on the road ahead, but something in my gut tells me that danger is lurking in the shadows. As I drive deeper into the woods, I notice movement out of the corner of my eye, and I slam on the brakes. My eyes widen in fear as I see a wolf-headed humanoid standing on the side of the road. It's like something out of a horror movie, too surreal to be real. It slowly approaches, revealing razor-sharp claws. I hit the gas and veer to the left, getting out of there as fast as I can. I can feel my heart pounding in my chest, and my mind is racing with terror. What kind of monstrous creature was that? How did it get there? I don't want to believe what I just saw, but I know I can't take any chances. I press down on the gas pedal and I drive as fast as I can, praying that I'll make it out of these woods alive. Every mile that I put between me and that wolf-headed creature brings me a small sense of relief, but the memory of those piercing amber eyes and razor-sharp claws remains etched in my mind. I may not be the most educated man, but I know one thing. The Dogman is real. I can't help what I kill. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I was having that dream again. You know, the one where you're chasing a rabbit. What? You mean you don't have that dream? Oh, well, then you must not be a werewolf. I've always believed in fate, in the intricate web that connects people's lives, guiding us toward our destinies. But these days I find myself trapped in a dark and merciless curse. My name is Jonathan, and I am afflicted with lycanthropy. I woke up with a knot in my stomach, the undeniable sensation of unease coursing through my veins. The same familiar feeling that had plagued me for weeks, escalating day by day. I knew what was happening, and it terrified me to my core. I was turning into a werewolf. Every night, as the full moon inched closer, an inexplicable transformation lingered within me, growing stronger with each passing minute. It was a curse that I had obsessed over ever since I stumbled upon a mystical book hidden away in a dusty old bookstore on 13th Street. It was the summer of '89 when I uncovered that mysterious little book lost amidst the dusty shelves. Time seemed to stand still inside that bookstore as the world outside bustled with the chaos of modernity. The allure of the past had always intrigued me, and in that ancient tome, I found my key to unlock the secrets of a forgotten era. As I flipped through its fragile pages, my mind fluttered with excitement and curiosity. The book itself seemed untouched by time, its leather cover weathered and worn, sharing tales of sorcery and enchantment. I wasn't sure if any of them were real, but each spell held the promise of otherworldly powers, a ticket to a world beyond our own, a world where magic thrived and dreams were made manifest. I suspected it all wasn't really real, but it was written as though it were, and in those days, that was good enough for me. Without much thought, I purchased the book, my heart pounding with anticipation, as if the pages themselves held invisible forces ready to leap out and envelop me. Little did I know that within its series of incantations, nestled among those spells, by a particular invocation to become a werewolf, a spell that I would dare to cast, oblivious to the inescapable consequences. I enjoyed the book privately, not wanting to share even the awareness of its existence with anyone I knew. I don't feel that people are generally to be trusted with power, and I was beginning to suspect that this book had genuine power within it. The words inside told me to read them aloud, while unclothed, under the light of the moon, in the woods. And I was still young enough in those days that I went ahead and did exactly that. Moonlit nights soon became my temporal playground, where I found solace beneath the glow of the celestial orb that my life was beginning to revolve around. With each passing evening, my spirit tingled more and more, from the inside out, as if a wild beast stirred within me, yearning to break free from the confines of humanity. And so it happened. On a fateful evening lit by a silver-bathed moon, I recited the ancient words from that forgotten book of magic. The words danced off my tongue, carrying a power I hadn't comprehended. For a fleeting moment, I felt the air around me shift, as though nature herself were acknowledging the existence of the spell. As the final syllable escaped my lips, a surge of energy coursed through my veins, transforming my world into a whirlwind of sensation. Bones cracked, muscles contorted, and a darkness consumed my vision. The transformation was swift and merciless. I had unwittingly delivered myself into the clutches of a curse. I had deliberately become a werewolf. The nights that followed were filled with an uncontrollable appetite for the chase. The moon's call seeped deep into my bones, a siren's song that defied all reason. I watched helplessly as the beast within me, born of ancient magic, took over my body under the ever-watchful gaze of the goddess Luna. I spent years seeking a remedy to undo the spell, poring over countless tomes and consulting hermit-like sages who possess knowledge of the arcane. But the curse remains unbroken to this day, stubbornly intertwined with my existence. It became evident that I was fated to live this dual life, part man and part not. Regret echoes through my memories as I reminisce about that fateful day in the bookstore, about the folly of my youthful impetuosity. But as the years passed, a strange acceptance settled within me, and I realized that the werewolf and I are forever entwined. I've learned to embrace this duality, to dance between humanity and the night. So here I stand, a man burdened with a secret, forever ruled by the waxing and waning of the moon. The book that granted me this affliction remains a haunting reminder of my youthful naivete. Now my existence itself has become a testament to the power of ancient magic, as well as to the fact that some enchantments cannot be reversed, and some choices have irreversible consequences. Foolishly, I had unlocked the secrets of the book's pages, and now I was paying the price. Over the decades, I had built up an emergency bug-out routine in order to get as far from the humans as I could before the change took place. If I changed when I was in civilization, that meant someone wouldn't wake up the next morning. I learned that horrific fact the hard way. But fortunately, I lived 3 blocks from the woods, in an urban part of town. It was very run down, but I was lucky to even afford that. I knew that if I lost that apartment, it was back to looking for a cave in the woods to sleep in. One that's not already occupied by another dog-headed man, I mean. This is Michigan, after all. With beads of sweat forming on my brow, I rummaged through my belongings, collecting the essentials: a bag filled with clothes, a makeshift weapon, and my map of the nearby woods. My only chance at surviving the night without anyone getting hurt. was escaping to the forest before the night fell upon the unsuspecting town. My heart raced as I sprinted through the dimly lit streets, the full moon looming ominously above. I knew time was running out, and each minute that ticked by felt like a second. But fate, relentlessly toying with me, seemed determined to prevent my escape. First, a common commotion brought the entire town to a standstill. Then a stray dog darted across the road in front of me, causing me to skid to a halt to avoid a collision. Impatience clawed at my chest, but I knew I couldn't afford to attract attention. I waited in silence, knowing that my ordeal was only beginning. As soon as I could resume my frantic pace, an abrupt downpour erupted from the heavens. Heavy rain soaked my clothes, plastering them to my body and obscuring my vision. I was alone, water weighing me down, yet that wasn't my biggest concern. With every soaking step, my transformation seemed to inch closer, despite my desperate attempt to outrun it. A blinding flash of lightning accompanied by a deafening thunderclap surprised me and caused me to stumble, narrowly avoiding a collision with a lamppost. My heart pounded in my ears, drowned out only by the relentless rain pummeling the earth. The storm raged on, but I couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. Finally, I reached the outskirts of town, the edge of civilization. My legs burned. My lungs ached. The relief washed over me. I was so close to surviving, to making those woods. But fate, relentless as ever, had one final twist in store for me. As I rounded a corner panting heavily, I found myself running smack into a police officer. He was drenched in rain, gripping his baton tightly. Panic surged through my veins. I had run right into the arms of authority, right as the moon reached its zenith. "Calm down, son," the police officer said, wariness etched across his face. "You're not in any trouble. Are you?" My words caught in my throat. My body trembled with the lunar energy coursing through me. In that moment, time seemed to slow, the world crystallizing around me. I could no longer fight it. The transformation overcame me, the pain tearing through my flesh as bones shattered and reformed. Right in front of the astonished police officer, I hunched over, my body convulsing with pain. The clothes I wore ripped apart, unable to withstand the emerging beast within me. Fur sprouted from every pore, muscles expanding and twisting until I stood before him as a fully formed wolfman. The policeman's eyes widened in terror and disbelief, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun. Yet, as his trembling fingers fumbled, paralyzed by fear, I turned my gaze toward the shadows of the woods. The primal instincts of my newfound form took over, and with one final glance, I sprinted out into the night. Leaving the officer behind, my howls became one with the sounds of the darkness. I was now a creature of the night, a predator, roaming free. The curse had consumed me, and as the full moon painted the sky with ethereal light, I embraced my existence as the embodiment of both man and beast. When I spoke to my brother about all this just last week, he kept asking me to tell him what it was like to end someone, the way I'm pretty certain I have done. The fact is that I don't remember anything like that. I usually black out when I'm no, that's not the correct way to put it. I'm fully conscious when I'm the creature and the same when I'm me, but I just don't really remember very much about the other when I'm changed. Like when I'm human, I don't remember very much about what happened the night before. At least, not usually, but it's weird. Like, you know how sometimes you wake up remembering your dream, but Other times you don't remember if you even dreamed at all. It's kinda like that. The nights I do remember are usually the tedious ones. The ones where I see a nice big plump rabbit go into a hole, and then I sit there behind a bush for the entire night, waiting for it to come back out again so I can eat it. The nights when I actually succeed in catching something, well, those most often get blanked out from my memory, and I'm grateful for that. It seems that once I catch one living thing, whatever it may be, that drives up my bloodlust, and I grow increasingly more manic and dangerous throughout the rest of the night. There isn't anything I can do to stop it either. I can't help what I kill. I do it entirely out of instinct. When I am the wolf, I admit that there are some peaceful moments, but the majority of the time, I'm looking around for something that's moving, and then I try to stop it from moving anymore ever again. If I'm hungry, I'll eat, but if not, I'll still stop everything from moving anyway, just because that's the way I was programmed to behave. Programmed by the spell I moroniccally inflicted upon myself. Once upon a time, there was a woman, Emma. She possessed a heart pure and compassionate, a beacon of light that shone through the darkest of nights. Emma had always been my saving grace, a sanctuary for my tormented soul, but now I feared the very essence of my being would unleash a calamity upon her fragile life. In the beginning, our love story was like a mesmerizing melody, igniting our hearts with an overwhelming passion. Every touch, every caress, felt more intense under the moonlit sky. But as time passed, an undeniable darkness crept inside me, devouring everything in its path. The beast within me emerged during those cursed nights, when my body contorted and pulsated with unimaginable pain. My senses sharpened, and a primeval hunger possessed my very core. It was the hour of the wolf, and I was powerless against my lupine side. Terrified, I confided in Emma, baring my soul and revealing the horrors that haunted me. She listened intently, her eyes brimming with concern, her delicate hand gently resting on mine. Emma believed that she could save me, that love could conquer even the most monstrous of problems. But in this case, she was gravely mistaken. My transformations grew more violent with each passing moon, my humanity slipping between my gnarled claws. Dark memories plagued my mind, of blood-soaked nights where my feral instincts took control. How could I allow the woman I loved to be subjected to such terror? I pleaded with Emma, my voice trembling with desperation, urging her to abandon the fool's hope that she could ever cure me. I explained that my affliction was a self-inflicted curse, an inescapable prison. Her touch, so gentle and soothing, would only serve as a catalyst to awaken that monster inside me. But Emma, forever selfless, remained steadfast in her belief. She saw me not as a monster, but as a wounded soul, in need of salvation. Love is stronger than any darkness, she would say, with an unwavering determination. And though her words settled fondly in my heart, they held no sway over my cursed existence. I knew the depths of the atrocities I was capable of committing in my lupine form, the lives I could end, the innocence I could tear asunder. The mere idea of Emma, caught up in the violent grasp of my other side, caused a torment so profound that it eroded the last flicker of hope within me. So I pleaded once more, my voice laced with anguish, and anguish alone. "Stay away, Emma," I begged. "Stay away, before my werewolf side brings only ruin upon you." It was a plea born of love, of the desperation to protect her from the monstrosity that resided within my fractured soul. But Emma, stubbornly resilient, would not yield. Her eyes met mine, filled with unwavering resolve. "Jonathan, I will not abandon you," she said, her voice imbued with a strength I wished I could summon. "We'll face this curse together," she said, arm in arm, until the very end. Her words struck me with a force I had never experienced, shattering the walls I had built around myself. Emma's unwavering love, her steadfast determination, had bridged the chasm between the man I once was and the monster I feared I was becoming. For the first time, I allowed a glimmer of hope to flicker deep within me. The two of us had some wine with our dinner, and toasted to the idea that we might have a future together. We danced and sang, and then collapsed into a chair, her on top of me, for a contented nap. But then, in my dream, I felt the changes overtaking me, and I woke up with a start, in great and severe pain and panic. I don't remember Emma being there at all. I only remember the terrible sensations that come when the transformation is already underway. I remember running from the apartment building and making my way to the woods, but I don't remember anything else until I woke up, sleeping high up on a branch in a tree, at dawn the next morning. I always wake up feeling incredible after being the werewolf. Sure, I have some muscle pains or cuts now and then, but there's an overall feeling of exhilaration the next morning as I wake up to greet the brand new day. And then I start to have to figure out how to climb down the tree that I apparently use claws to climb up into, and other issues like that. Almost immediately, I feel ashamed. If I have any clothing left on at all, it's always torn up in ridiculous ways. I'll be filthy, and sometimes covered in blood. The guilt starts creeping back in, too, as soon as I'm out of immediate danger. On that morning, I also had an extra concern. Had Emma been hurt the night before when I woke up in the process of the transformation? I hoped she had already gone to bed before that happened, but I literally couldn't remember clearly enough to know. This concern quickened my step on my way hiking out of the woods that morning, and my heart beat fast from more than just exertion. I couldn't wait to see Emma, so that I could hug her and tell her how important she was to me. But when I got home, there was nobody there. I didn't see any bloodstains or signs of violence, but I also didn't find Emma, and she didn't seem to have left a note if she went out. I freaked and called the police, shouting into the phone that my wife was missing after I only searched for her for maybe 20 minutes. Well, Emma was never found, and when one of the cops tipped me off that I was the main suspect, I beat it out of town into the woods, which is where I've lived ever since. If you can call this living, I'm not even sure I'd call it subsisting. But I'm alive at least. One thing about being a werewolf is that life is one long thrill ride. Except, when your loved ones go missing and it's somehow your own fault. That's not very thrilling at all. I no longer have plans. I no longer have goals. I just repeat the same patterns each day. Kill, eat, relieve myself, sleep, and repeat the process. Lately I've begun to have dreams of a lady werewolf. I wonder at this point if these are dreams of longing, or if those are partial memories of actual events, which happened while I was in the other form. For all I know, I have a family when I'm the monster. For all I know, the monster has more of a real life than I've ever had. For all I know, I may have a werewolf child. Now there's something to think about. So when you're having a bad day these days, try to remember, it could always be worse. You could have deliberately and idiotically given yourself lycanthropy. And now I'd like to end by thanking our channel members and PayPal Club members. First of all, we have to thank Godzilla Tim, who I will be thanking more formally in our Saturday night show this week. This man has joined twice to our channel membership, and he gave us £5 British just last night on top of that. So yeah, we will be thanking Godzilla Tim again tomorrow. We also want to thank Kathy Barrickman, of course, as we always do. That having been said, we love all of our channel members, and we are only still online because of the support of each and every one of you guys. I'm going to read out these randomly as they come up. All of these people are just as important to the channel as the others, and we love you all equally. In random order, thank you to Efren Kolunga, Mary Shabazz, Fraggy Dendron aka Megara, James Fleming, Nancy Sears, Matthew Frederick, Ace Williams, who's also joined twice like Godzilla Tim, Inocencio de Divas, Anna White, Deborah Darcy, Julie Sadler, Ron Barracuda, who has been joined to our channel membership the longest. Blue Cruz, Super Spark, Victor O, Helena 66, Esteban P, Angie K, Roy Faulkner, Stel Cordova, Michelle Rich, Adam Friday, Hagridella, Jim Mooney, Deborah Areola, Scott Fuller, Chris Nihis, Stacy Miller, Tiffany Walsh, Melissa Kutch, John Smith, Dave Rabbit, Victor Collado, Fuzzy Lou, The Ender Werewolf, The Zoomancer, Michael A. Bell, Linda Hagler, Sarah Jones, James Tucker, Nicholas Carroll, Todd Graves, Mr. Spinks, Patricia Taggart, Franco Albi. What was that with 3 question marks? Valerie Gomez aka Nicole Gomez, Long Island Bigfoot, who just signed up for 7 months of memberships, Scott Halisic, Johnny Pasillas, Justin Simon, Anthony Johnson, and a special thank you and message for Jeff Kennedy. We keep getting PayPal payments from you, but your email no longer exists, so we have no way to send you the links to our members-only shows. I hope you're okay. If you're still with us and you hear this message, please connect a different email to your PayPal, or else please contact me with a different way I can send you the links. I hope all is well with you and with everyone still listening this late into the show. Please let me know if you'd like me to continue this podcast and try to make it a series, or if you think it's just a Halloween thing that we should drop in November. Please come back tomorrow on YouTube and Rumble, when we will have a new story about a friendly dogman. Hope to see you then, and happy Halloween.